Let the diagram be very neat and labeled, because those diagrams which are not labeled, in spite of you drawing it very neatly, it will be considered as 0 mark. Therefore, labeling of the diagram is very important. Cell is the main basic unit of a life. Inflorescence is nothing but a bunch of flower together in a plant. You call it as the inflorescence. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to the introductory session for first PUC Biology. I am Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysore, Temple of Excellence. So once you take up your first PUC, wherein you choose Biology as one of your subject, you will always have a question. Biology is very vast. How much should I learn? How much effort should I put into? How many questions might come or might be asked in the examination from each of the chapter? And based on that, how much time should I spend to study for each chapter? So let me clear all your doubts in this particular session. So in today's session, we shall deal with how the question paper looks like, what are the textbooks that you have to refer, what are the chapters that are there in the textbook, and how many questions come out of each chapter, and how many practical experiments are there, and what is the model question paper of the practical looks like. So we shall start with the session. So the textbook that is usually used for the first PUC Biology or the 11th standard, it is the NCERT textbook, that is the National Council of Educational Research and Training. So this is a wonderful book which is easy to understand with beautiful illustrations and diagram, that too in color. So it is easy for you to learn and understand biology even more better. So what are there in the textbook, or what are the contents that are there inside the first PUC textbook of NCERT? So it is divided into 5 units, and each unit is given a theme or a name. So the first unit is diversity in the living world. The second unit is structural organization in plants and animals. Then comes structure and functions. And then we have plant physiology. And then the final 5th chapter, that is the human physiology. So diversity in the living world. Again, under this, there are 4 topics that you'll have to study. One is the living world, the biological classification, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom. So you know that in the living world there is a diversity or a vast variety of organisms that are present. So it is difficult to know about each and every organisms at a stretch, right? So that is why scientists, in order to make it easy for us to understand the distinguishing characters or the morphology or of each organism, they have done biological classification. So this is a very beautiful subject which will actually mesmerize you when you learn about how organisms having similar characters are grouped under one particular family or kingdom. So under kingdom, you will study about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. Again, under plant, you have the bryophytes, the pteridophytes, the algae, the mosses, and all that comes under the plant kingdom. It's not just the normal trees and the flowers which you look in your daily life. Apart from that, there are different kinds of things that come, or living organisms that come under the plant kingdom, which you will study. Next, moving on to the animal kingdom. So again, under the animal kingdom, you have the reptiles, you have the mammals, the aves, the insects. So all these different forms of life you will be studying under the animal kingdom. Next, moving on to the next important chapter, that is the structural organization in plants and animals. So under this particular chapter, you will study about morphology of the flowering plants. So once you have studied about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, you will move into studying their structures and the functions of these particular organisms. So for that, you need to know the morphology, that is the external characteristics of a flowering plant. So that you will be studying under the chapter 5 in the name morphology of flowering plants. Then you will move to once you have studied the external characteristics of the flowering plant, you should understand what is present inside the flowering plant. For that, you need to study the anatomy. Anatomy is nothing but wherein you take a cross section or a transverse section of the plant, and when you observe it under the microscope, what all different cells are present, what are the different functions of the cells, all that you will study under the anatomy of flowering plants. Next, moving on to animals. Under animals, you will study the structural and organization of different organs or organ systems or external morphology of the animal. All that you will study under structural organization in animals. Next, moving to, once you know the basics about the structure and the function of the plants and animals, you will move to study the structure and the functions in detail. So, you'll study the cell. So, cell is the main basic unit of a life. So, if the life of an organism has to run smoothly, then cell plays a very important role, because in the cell there is the nucleus, and the nucleus is the one that maintains the activity of all the other organelles that are present in the cell. So, therefore, studying the cell is very, very important. So, you will study cell, the unit of life. Then you will study about the various biomolecules that are present in the plants. So, these biomolecules, they help the plants in many ways. Not just that, even the biomolecules such as the secondary metabolites, the terpenoids, the flavonoids, the phenols, all these compounds are used not only by the plants but also used by the human beings to produce various medicines and all that. So, about that you will study in the next chapter, that is the chapter 9. Biomolecules. After that, you will study how the cells divide. So, you have in the cells, you have the meiosis stage, you have the mitosis stage. So, different stages of cell division and cell cycle you will study under this particular chapter, that is cell cycle and cell division. Next, moving on to the next unit, that is the 4th unit, plant physiology. So, under plant physiology, you will study about the transport in plants. So, plants, when they make their own food, when they synthesize their own food, or when the roots take up water, how the water is transported, how the mineral and nutrition are transported. So, all that you will study under transport in plants. Next is mineral nutrition. So, you have to know what are the macronutrients and the micronutrients required by the plants for their survival. So, all that you will study under mineral nutrition. Then you will study, okay, where will they get the mineral nutrition? Where will they get the energy to survive? All that, or where will the plants get their food from? It is because of photosynthesis. So, about photosynthesis, you will study in the 13th chapter. Then, plants, you know that like animals, they also respire, wherein they take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. So, how this process takes place in the plants, you shall study in the 14th chapter, that is respiration in plants. Next, after that, you will study about the plant growth and the development. So, how plant grows and all that you will study in the under chapter 15. Next, moving on to the final unit, that is human physiology. So, it is good, it is nice to study about ourselves, right? It is very interesting. So, this is one of the very interesting chapters wherein you'll study about digestion and how the digested foods are absorbed and for what purpose it is used by different parts of the body. All that you will study. Then you'll study how breathing takes place in humans or animals, wherein how the exchange of gases will take place. All that you will study. Then you will study about the body fluid and circulation. That is wherein you'll study especially about the heart. And next you have the excretory products and their elimination. That is in chapter 19, wherein you'll study about the kidney, the function of the kidney, because the kidney is the one organ which helps in the excretory products, their elimination and all that function is done by the kidney. So, that you will study. Then you will study how animals or human beings we move. So, you'll study about locomotion and movement. Then you'll study about, so if you have to move, say for example, you want to walk a kilometer distance. So, when you want to walk, the signal should be sent to your brain saying that make my legs move so that I can walk and reach to that particular distance. How is it possible? It is because of neurons or nerve cells that is present throughout a body. So, these neurons or nerve cells, they send message to a brain stating that, okay, this is a function that you have to do now. So, how all that takes place? You'll study under neural control and coordination, a very interesting chapter. Then finally, you have the last chapter, that is chemical coordination and integration. So to send these signals through the neurons, there are various chemical substances and all that takes part in them. So how all this chemical control and coordination and integration and all will take place, you will study in the last chapter. So therefore, your textbook, it has 5 units with 22 chapters. So this is the complete contents that are there which you'll have to study in your first PUC. So next, moving on to blueprint. So you'll always have like, okay, few chapters are very easy, very small. Let me give less time to that. To which chapter should I give more amount of time? How many questions, for how many marks the questions may come up from each chapter. So always you'll have that in mind so that it will be easy for you to study. So we shall see how the blueprint will actually look like. So in the first chapter, you have for 2 marks, you have 1 question. So total, the chapter carries only 2 marks. So the first chapter, that is Living World, it is very, very small and easy. It carries only 2 marks, wherein they'll ask 2-mark question 1. And next, in biological classification, they ask 1 question for 1 mark and 1 question for 2 marks. So totally it is for 3 marks. Next, plant kingdom, how many marks they will ask for? They'll ask only 1 question from plant kingdom, which is for 5 marks. So therefore it is for 5 marks. The whole chapter is for 5 marks. But here you have to be very, very careful. Don't think that, okay, they'll ask only for 1 mark, they'll ask only for 5 marks. So I can neglect the small questions or neglect the large ones and study only what they have asked for. That is not possible, because what usually the PU board they will do is, they will split up and ask. Say for example, in this particular chapter, that is chapter 1, Living World, I told you they'll ask only 1 question. According to the blueprint, they have given 1 question which carries 2 marks. So what they will do is, instead of giving 1 question for 2 marks, in the 2 mark section itself, they will divide the question as 1 and 1. They will ask 2 questions, like question number 11. A, 1 question, B, 1 question. So that is how they will split. So therefore, you have to read and study from one corner of the textbook to the other corner. You should not leave anything in your biology textbook. Completely, all the chapters, entirely all the questions should be studied. So that is very, very important. Next, moving on to animal kingdom. So animal kingdom, it carries a 1 question for 2 marks and 1 question for 5 marks, therefore 7 marks. Next, moving on to morphology of flowering plants. So morphology of flowering plants, they usually ask 1 question for 1 mark and 1 question for 5 marks. Total is 6 marks. So your first unit, that is the diversity in the living world, it has a weightage of total 17 marks. So it has a weightage of, it is easy. So study the first unit well. It is an easy unit. Easily you can score 17 marks there. Next, looking into the anatomy of flowering plants. So in anatomy of flowering plants, they'll ask 2 questions which is for 2 marks. Again here they may split it as 1 mark and 1 mark, can't say. So 2 questions for 2 marks. So therefore 4 marks. And next, structural organization in animals. So in structural organization in animals, they will ask 1 question for 5 marks. Again here, don't think that I can leave all the 1 mark, 2 mark and 3 mark related question and answers. I'll only concentrate on writing long answers. No. Why? Because again they may divide there as 3 and 2. They may divide it as 2, 2 and 1. So can't say. In the 5 mark section itself, they might divide the questions and make it a total of 5 marks. So you have to be very careful. And next, under cell, the unit of life, they will ask for 1 question for 3 marks and 1 question for 5 marks. So totally it is for 8 marks. Then moving on to the next chapter, that is biomolecules. Biomolecules, they will ask for 1 question for 3 marks and 1 question for 1 mark. Totally it carries a weightage of 4 marks. That particular chapter carries a weightage of 4 marks. Next to cell cycle and cell division. So cell cycle and cell division, they will ask 1 question for 2 marks, 1 question for 3 marks. Therefore, it has a weightage of 5 marks. And your third unit, that is structural third unit, that is cell structure and function, it carries a total weightage of 17 marks. So it is easy. According to the blueprint, if you study, it is easy. Again, you will have to read the whole textbook because I told you how the questions they divide the questions and they ask. Next, moving on to plant physiology. So plant physiology, they will ask for 1 mark, 1 question, then 3 mark, 1 question, therefore total 4 marks. Plant physiology is a unit. Transport in plants, they will ask 1 question for 1 mark and 1 question for 3 marks. Therefore, it is 4 marks. Next, moving to mineral nutrition. And this plant physiology is one of the very important chapters. Why? Because can you see here, it alone carries 27 marks. There you had 17, 15 and 17, but this alone carries 27 marks. So it is a very huge chapter and it is very important. Next is mineral nutrition. So you have all mineral nutrition. They ask 2 questions for 1 mark and 1 question for 1 mark. Therefore, 5 mark. The weightage is 5 mark. So next, moving on to photosynthesis in higher plants. So for photosynthesis in higher plants, they usually ask 1 question for 1 mark and 1 question for 5 marks. Therefore, it carries 6 marks. And next, moving on to respiration in plants, it is 1 question for 2 marks and 1 question for 5 marks. Therefore, 7 marks. So among all these, under unit 5, this respiration in plants carries the maximum mark, that is 7 marks. Next, plant growth and development. So plant growth and development, only 1 question will be asked for 5 marks. Again here, as I told you, they may split and ask like 1, 1, 2 and 2. They may split 3 and 2. They may split 2, 2 and 1. They may split and ask. So concentrating on everything is very, very important. Next, moving on to digestion and absorption. So digestion and absorption, 1 question for 1 mark. Therefore, it carries only 1 mark. Only 1 mark question will be asked from digestion and absorption. Next, breathing and exchange of gases. There is 1 question for 5 mark. 1 question for 5 mark. Next, moving on to body fluids and circulation. So body fluids and circulation, they ask 1 question for 2 marks and 1 for 5 marks. So total 7 marks. So body fluid and circulation carries a maximum mark when compared to all the other chapters under human physiology. Next is excretory products and their elimination. So that 1 question will be asked for 1 mark. 3 mark question is 1. Therefore, total 4 marks. The weightage of the chapter is 4 marks. Next, locomotion and movement. So locomotion and movement, again 1 question for 1 mark and 1 question for 3 marks, which carries 4 marks. Next, we have neural control and coordination. Neural control and coordination, only 1 question will be asked for 5 marks. Can't say, they may split and make it up to 5 marks. Next, chemical coordination and integration. They will ask 1 question for 3 marks. So it has a weightage of 3. So total, this is also, human physiology is also one of the important chapter because totally they ask for 29 marks. So it is very, very important. So this is about the blueprint. So now you'll get an idea how much you have to study, how you have to study. But in spite of this blueprint, my suggestion is study the entire textbook and be thorough, understand the concept, because if they ask analysis kind of questions also, you will be able to answer it very well. So let's see how the marks in the question paper it is divided. So the whole first PUC exam will be for 100 marks, wherein theory, that is the writing part, will be for 70 marks, and the practical examination wherein you'll perform the experiment and based on that you will score, it will be for 30 marks. So total you'll be writing your first PUC exam for 100 marks. So for 100 marks you'll be writing. So the question paper, it usually consists of 4 parts: part A, part B, part C and part D. And in part D, it is again divided into section 1 and section 2. So again in part D, it is divided into section 1 and 2. Section 1 and 2. And all the parts are compulsory. It is not that I will write only part A and part C and leave part B. That will not help. All the parts are compulsory. You have to attend all the questions, and then wherever there are diagrams, you have to draw the diagram and let the diagram be very neat and labeled, because those diagrams which are not labeled, in spite of you drawing it very neatly, it will be considered as 0 mark. Therefore, labeling of the diagram is very, very important. So this is very, very important, labeling of the diagram. And also keep it a point that let all the answers, if possible, let it be in points, and please underline the keyword so that your answer sheet will look good and it is also easy for the examiner to correct. If you are not able to write the answer correctly, that is grammatically correct also, by looking at the keywords, they will be able to understand what you have written and they will give you marks. So that is why underlining is very, very important. So this is about how the marks are distributed and what are the general instructions that you have to follow while writing your exam, first PUC examination. So I have put a slide of the model question paper to make you understand how it exactly looks. So you have a time of about 3 hours and the maximum mark is 70. So maximum mark is 70 because I told you 70 marks is for the theory and the rest 30 marks it will be for the practical examination. And usually I told you they have part A, part B, part C, part D, part A, part B, then they have part C, part D. Again in part D they have section 1 and they have section 2. So now moving on to part A. So what is there in part A? Usually 1 mark question will be asked in part A, where you can answer it in just 1 word or write a sentence wherever required. So under this 10 questions will be there and all the 10 are compulsory. You have to write all the 10. So answer the following in a word or a sentence each, and all the 10 questions are compulsory. This is the most tricky part because most of the students, they lose them 10 marks here itself. So every definition, every one word statements or answers that are there or terms that are there, it is good if you read it so that it will be easy for you to score. And not just this, for your competitive exams also, you know that only usually 1 word only will be asked, so it will be very helpful to you. So that is about part A. Moving on to part B. So in part B, out of 8, you have to write only 5. So 5 out of 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 questions will be asked. Out of that, you can write any 5 and it should be in 3 to 5 sentences. Why? Because so 3 to 5 sentence or 3 to 5 points, if you write it is enough because it is for 2 marks. So totally 5 questions you'll have to write out of 8, which is for 2 marks. Next, moving on to part C. Here also again any 5. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 questions are there. Out of that, if you write 5 is enough. So if you write 5 is enough. And it should be in 40 to 80 words. It's not that you have to count the words and sit in the exam hall. You have to write according to the marks. If you write a paragraph or write it in points, it is enough. And it carries about 3 marks. So 15 marks you will get in part C. So 15 marks you will get in part C. And here, as I told you while explaining the blueprint, I told you in some of the chapters, they will not have a question for 3 marks. They would have written directly, or they would have written that there is a question for 3 marks, but in the 1 mark and 2 mark column, it will be left blank. But can you see what they have done here? They have asked 3 questions, which is for 1 mark, 1 mark and 1 mark. Therefore, totally 3 marks. So this is what I said. They will divide and ask like this. So you have to be very careful. That is why you have to read everything that is there in the textbook. Next, moving on to part D, that is section 1. Here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions, out of which you have to write any 4. Any 4 out of the 6 questions. So any 4 you can write, and it in around 200 to 250 words. You have to write a large paragraph or many number of points, like at least 10 or 8 points. Why? Because it is for 5 marks. And the section altogether it carries 20 marks. So 20 mark it carries. So here again, as I showed, they have asked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions like this. Each for 1 mark each. Therefore, totally 5 marks. So you might have thought, okay, in that particular chapter, they'll ask only for 5 marks. So I'll study only long answers. But can you see here what they have done? They have divided. So that is why you have to be very, very careful. Next, in section 2, that is part D, section 2. Again here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. And out of the 5, if you write any 3, it is enough. And again here also, they have divided. You can see here they have divided. So that is why, or they may ask, they may give 5 definitions. Write the definition of so and so, 5 definitions. So like that, any way they can ask. And also diagrams will be asked for 5 marks. And usually in 2 or 3 marks, they will ask differences also. So write the difference between homogamete, heterogamete. Write the difference between animalia, plantae. So like that, they'll ask the difference. And also in 3 marks, they will ask draw a neat label diagram. So if it is for 3 marks, it is enough if you draw the diagram and label it properly. And if it was for 5 marks, they will write explain with a suitable diagram, wherein you will have to draw the diagram, label them, and then explain the diagram in words. So that is how the distribution of mark is done. So this is about the question paper. Next, moving on to the most interesting part, which every biology students love, that is running to the lab, wherein they'll get to do the experiments hands-on, right? So it is very interesting. So there are a list of experiments to keep you busy in the practical lab. So you have, first one is compound microscope exercise, wherein you will study the different parts of the microscope, what is the magnification of the lens, how to adjust the slide, how to use the slide. All that you will study under this. Next, we have, once you learn how to use the microscope, what are the different parts of the microscope and all that, you will start observing the bacteria, fungi and the plants. Next, third experiment, you have animal morphology. Fourth experiment, you will be studying about the different plant tissues, be it the sclerenchyma, the parenchyma, different cells and tissues of the plants. Then you'll study the you'll take the section of the stem and the root, and then you will study the cells. Therefore, you will understand the difference between the dicot stem and monocot stem, dicot root and monocot root. So that you will study under the experiment number 5. Next, under experiment 6, you will study the animal tissues. So for animal tissues, a permanent slide will already be prepared. That slide you can focus, and you have to identify what that animal tissue is based on the structure of the tissue. Next is, you study root modification like prop roots, secondary roots, lateral roots, primary roots, all those different modifications you will understand by taking the section of the root. So root modification, then stem modification, then what are the modifications in the leaf. Some of the leaves may have thick cuticle, some of the leaves may have thin cuticle, the epidermis, some will have a cuticle, some may not have a cuticle. Like that, differences in the leaves, morphology of the leaves you will study here. And then you will study the inflorescence. Inflorescence is nothing but a bunch of flower together in a plant. You call it as the inflorescence. So different types of inflorescence, racemose, cymose, terminal, axial. So all these different kinds of inflorescences you will study under this, wherein you will observe the blue beautiful flowers. Next is, you will study the taxonomy of the flowering plants. Here what you will do is, you will observe the morphology of the plant, and then you will try to identify what the name of the plant is. So identifying the name of the plant means not the local name, but you'll be able to tell the scientific name and to which family it belongs. And next, you study about potato osmoscope. Then you'll study about plasmolysis. Plasmolysis is nothing but based on the concentration of the solution, how the water movement will take place into and out of the cell. So that you will study under plasmolysis. Then you will study under distribution of stomata. So in the distribution of stomata, you will take a leaf, you will peel it, and then you will observe under the microscope. So when you observe under the microscope, in between the cells, you can see beautiful kidney-shaped structures like this, kidney-shaped structures. These are nothing but stomata. So in one particular peel, how many stomatas are there, that you will count. So that is nothing but distribution of stomata. Then how much amount of water is lost, that is how much amount of water is lost from the plants because of transpiration, that you will study under rate of transpiration. Then paper chromatography. Paper chromatography is really a very colorful and a beautiful experiment, wherein you will take the plant extract, put it on a chromatography paper and wait for some time. So once the pigments get separated, beautiful green, yellow, orange, all colors of pigments will get separated. So it is a very beautiful experiment. Then you'll also study about the rate of respiration. Then physiological experimental setups will be kept wherein you'll study about that. And you'll study about the detection of biological molecules, like in a plant extract, how many types of secondary metabolites are there, terpenoids, phenols, all that, whether it is there, present or absent, all that you will study under this. Then you will go in for urine analysis, then you will go in for salivary amylase activity, wherein how much amount of amylase is there in the saliva sample. By taking a swab, you'll do the experiment and you will find out. Then you'll study about the human skeleton, what are the different bones, bone joints, what are they called, how many numbers of bones are there, what are the function, all that you will study under human skeleton. Then you'll study about the bone joints and also in the practical lab. Finally, you will also be taught how the practical model question paper will look like, how the questions will be asked, and also what is the scheme of evaluation. So, in the coming slides, we shall discuss about the practical examination model question paper, and we shall also discuss about the scheme of evaluation. So, first PUC practical examination will be conducted for 2 hours, wherein you will be full busy performing the experiments, and the experiments that you perform will carry 20 marks, wherein a different number of experiments, that is experiment A, B, C, D, E and F will be given based on the chit that you pick up, and then you'll have to perform the experiment. That will alone carry 20 marks altogether, and viva voce is for 4 marks, that is 30 questions around. It depends on the examiner. He can ask you 30 questions or he can ask even more, less or more than that. So for that viva voce, wherein they will ask you questions regarding the experiment that you're doing in the lab, or also regarding the questions that are there in the textbook. So you have to thoroughly get ready for the viva voce. So based on that, based on how you answer, based on your confidence, based on the way you're doing your practical in the lab, the marks will be given to you. So next is practical records. So practical records alone will fetch you 6 marks. It is the easy way to get marks. So draw the diagram neatly and label it properly and keep your practical book tidy. So that will easily fetch you 6 marks just by sitting and drawing diagrams. Keeping the book proper, neat will fetch you 6 marks. So this is about the practical examination. Next, moving on to the model question paper for practical examination. As I told you, it is for 2 hours and the marks is 30 marks. So maximum marks is 30 marks, and then they'll ask questions like here they have asked. For question number 1, they have given 3 options, wherein first you'll be preparing a temporary slide by taking a transfer section of the plant material, and you will have to observe it under the microscope. Then one more question is you have to conduct a plasmolysis experiment. That is the second question. And the third one is you have to prepare a temporary slide of the epidermal peel in order to count the number of stomata that is present in that. So any 3 chits will be made and it will be given to you. So whichever chit you pick, that experiment will be given to you for performing. So that is the first question. In the second question, you'll have 2 options. Again, here also a chit will be given. Whichever experiment you will get, that you'll have to perform, wherein you have to look at the plant material, observe its characteristics, and then you have to tell the scientific name, write the scientific name, and also you have to write the family name of that particular plant to which it belongs, and you have to write the reasons why you consider that plant to belong to this particular family. Next, one more question is a plant will be given. You have to write the scientific name, then you have to study the floral parts of the plant and write the floral formula as well as draw the floral diagram. So that is about the question 2. Next, here any one will be given depending on whichever chit you pick, what comes to you, you will have to perform the experiment. Next is experiment 3, that is C. Here plant extract will be given, and whatever the examiner asks you, whichever biochemical test he wants you to do, that you will have to do. So that is question number 3, that is material C. Next, question number 4, material D. Here, the physiological experimental setup will be kept. Looking at that, you have to identify what it is and you have to give the reasons for that. Next is question number 5. In question number 5, a slide will be focused under the microscope or a specimen in a glass bottle will be kept. You have to identify and give reasons, right? Points about it. Next, in question number 6, you have to identify. So all these carries different marks. So totally up to question number 6, it will be for 20 marks. Next 2 questions, it is for 10 marks. So performing the experiments will fetch you 20 marks. So next, again in the 6th question, a slide or a specimen will be kept and you have to give 2 reasons for that. Next is viva voce. So viva voce, it is for 4 marks and your practical record, it is for 6 marks. So this is how the question paper will be given to you. It is the same throughout until the experiments change. If the experiment doesn't change, this is the question paper pattern that will be given to you. Accordingly, you'll have to work in the lab as well. So next, moving on to the scheme. So scheme is very, very important. Why? Because in a practical, you need to know what and all you have to write, what you should not write, but what and all you have to write, that you will know. Sometimes what happens is, a material will be given to you, say for example a plant material, you will write the family and you'll write all the points and everything, but you'll forget to write the scientific name of that particular plant. At that time you will lose mark. So that is why scheme is very, very important, so that you will know how the marks are distributed in the case of practical exam. So here, for example, in question number 1, I told you they will give you either a plant material wherein you'll have to take a section and put it under the microscope. If that is the case, then preparation of the slide will fetch you 3 marks, identification will give you 1 mark, and then writing 2 reasons why you think that material is so and so. Writing 2 reasons will fetch you 1 mark. For the question number 1, if you have got the experiment, plasmolysis experiment, then preparation of the slide is 1 mark, wherein you'll peel the material, put it in the slide, put the cover slip, put water droplet, put the cover slip and observe it under the microscope. So much will give you 1 mark. Then drawing the diagram will be 2 marks. Then next is stomatal apparatus. If you got the experiment, that is stomatal apparatus, here preparation of the slide is for 3 marks and drawing the diagram is for 2 marks. Next, if it is taxonomy related experiment, that is where a plant material will be given, you have to look at the characters, identify the name, family name, and then write the reasons. For that, identification with scientific name is 1 mark, mentioning the name of the family is 1 mark, and writing any 6 reason will fetch you 3 marks. And if at all, by lifting a chit, you have got an experiment wherein a plant will be given, you have to write the scientific name, then you have to observe the floral characters, write the floral formula and draw the diagram. Marks are distributed, we will just see. So identification with the scientific name will carry 1 mark, mentioning the name of the family will carry 1 mark, floral formula will carry 1 mark, and drawing the floral diagram will carry 2 marks. Next is biochemical test. So the extract will be given, you will have to, or you will only have to prepare an extract and then you will have to do the experiment to see what compound is present in the extract or not. For that, procedure is 1 mark, observation is 1 mark, and writing the result is 1 mark. Writing the result is this particular what compound is present, phenol present, phenol absent. Writing the result, that will fetch you 1 mark. Next, 4th question, an experimental setup will be kept where you will have to identify and write reasons. For that, aim of the experiment 1 mark, and physiology or the principle involved behind that particular experiment, it is 2 mark. So, say for example, they have given you osmosis of potato. So, what you do is you put the potato in a different concentration of sucrose solution and you will say that the potato's weight has reduced. So, what is the principle behind that? Because there is a concentrated sucrose solution surrounding in the external environment of the potato has lost water out of it. That is why the weight has reduced. That is the principle behind it. So, writing the principle will fetch you 2 marks. Next is specimen. Question number 5, wherein a specimen or a slide will be kept. You have to identify, name it and write reasons. So identification 1 mark, any 2 reason will be 1 mark. Again, 6th question, identification will be 1 mark, that is identifying the specimen, then commenting wherein you'll have to write 2 reasons which will fetch 1 mark. And already you know Viva Voce is for 4 marks and practical record is for 6 marks. So this is how the scheme is being divided. So, and also the practical record should be corrected and very neat if you have to fetch all the 6 marks. So this is about the practical scheme of evaluation. So whichever experiment is given to you, it should be clear for you that what you should write, how much you have to write and all that in terms of practicals, because it is only for 2 hours wherein you'll have to perform the experiment as well as theoretically write whatever you have performed in the lab. So therefore, this is the scheme of evaluation for practicals. I hope you have understood this session and you have an idea now like how much you have to study, how much effort you have to put. So whatever the blueprint says, whatever is the scheme is, it is better you study the entire textbook, understand the concept so that any kind of question or any number of questions they ask, you will be able to answer it without any second thought. So I hope this will be very useful to you and all the best for your future studies. Thank you.